Thank you for letting us give you a short presentation. I'd like to give a quick introduction to Eric and myself. Eric worked for the Nature Conservancy Council, English Nature and Natural England for over 30 years, predominantly working on protected sites and town and country planning, retiring just over 3 years ago. I am an amateur geologist and are the representative of the Shropshire Geological Society on the Local Sites Partnership and Biodiversity Partnership. Between the two of us, we already had the links into the nature conservation community, and it hasn't proved difficult to think lichens when attending some of these meetings. Over to Eric.
Thank you, Mary. Give you an overview of the talk. This talk is based on our experience in Shropshire in England. We know things will be different elsewhere in the UK and abroad. I think the principles should generally be the same, certainly across the United Kingdom. Our overall aim is to get the protection and management of lichens into local policy. So turning all the evidence base that we have from the field surveys into policy. The policy levers that we have in Shropshire are the Local Biodiversity Action Plans, which I'll come to explain in a moment. And then Mary will take over and talk about local sites and nature recovery networks. But remember, the overall aim here is to get lichen conservation into policy, and so influence land management policy. Often that's through town and country planning, but it may also be the management of local sites, nature reserves, changes in agricultural policy, and forestry commission plans. Local biodiversity action plans. First, I want to give you a background to the Shropshire situation as we found it in 2018. And it's important to say that local biodiversity action plans cover both species and habitats, and that local biodiversity action plans are usually based on the United Kingdom's Biodiversity Action Plan for species and habitats. But then these are given a local flavour, in particular, locally important species. We reviewed the Shropshire LBAP in 2018, and there were 60 lichen species on it. 2 of these were from the UK BAP lichen species list, but we couldn't get anyone to tell us how the other 58 had been chosen and put onto the local list. So with that in mind, we tried to develop a 3-step rationale to build a revised lichen list for Shropshire. The first thing we did was to review the list of UK BAP lichen species against the records on the BLS database. And we found that we had 12 species that were UK BAP species and had been recorded in Shropshire. So at the very beginning, we had those 12 species. We then did a bit more digging. We looked at all the 137 lichen species on the UK BAP list and reviewed them against the distribution maps, habitat details and descriptions in Smith and Dobson. And we decided that there are about 11 more species we could add as probably being in Shropshire. The third step was a different way of approaching the question of what might be in Shropshire. And again, we looked at all 137 species on the UK BAP list to see if they were present or recorded in any of the neighbouring rice counties. That led us to compile a list and use the evidence in Smith and Dobson on habitats to weed out the ones that clearly we're not going to be finding in Shropshire. For example, ones with affinities to coastal habitats. And that led us to add about another 13 species. So in total, we had a provisional list of 36 species, which came from the UK BAP list, which we believe would be in Shropshire or had already been found in Shropshire. So it's very much work in progress so far. We have a local BAP list based on the UK BAP list, which we now need to add species which we think are important in the Shropshire context. But for that, we need to know a lot more about what species we have here and which ones are locally important. Over to you, Mary.
I'll now give you a flavour of the local sites. They're a GB-wide series of sites. They have different names in 4 nations and are often administered by the local authorities in partnership with other organisations. They are selected on locally agreed criteria for both biology and geological features. Here in Shropshire, we have both biological and geological local sites, which amount to over 1,000 across the entire county. The key difference of local sites from SSSIs is that local sites are a threshold series, not a representative series. So, if the site meets the locally agreed criteria for that particular interest feature, the area would become a local site. Here in Shropshire, we have an active local site partnership, which meets regularly, usually twice a year, more if we have more sites to review. Members include the 2 local authorities, the Wildlife Trust, Natural England, the Environment Agency, the Geological Society, and the Forestry Commission. Currently, the local site partnership has no selection criteria for lichen interest. The partnership have recently drawn up with experts criteria for waxcap fungi. So our objective over the course of the next 12 to 18 months will be to draw up some form of selection criteria for lichen sites in Shropshire. We would then hope we could put forward some areas for consideration as local sites with a lichen interest. Nature recovery networks are a new part of the UK's government 25-year plan for the environment. When I began to research these, specifically when the local sites partnership was starting to look at nature recovery networks, I came across 2 Natural England research reports, numbers 081 and 082. They were published last March, and they set out detailed information about what the concept of a nature recovery network is, as well as giving information about how you build a nature recovery network and the evidence base to do this. They are inclusive of all aspects of the natural environment, and it is also envisaged that they will have a large community public engagement. Here in Shropshire, the Local Sites Partnership has started to gather that evidence base to be able to build a nature recovery network here in Shropshire. The evidence base is important here, as you need to know where things are in order to work out whether you can link your existing sites, SSSIs, local sites, local wildlife sites, for nature conservation together to form networks, allowing nature to move. From a lichen perspective, we need to get a handle on the abundance and distribution of some of our more important lichen species, which Eric has talked about with relation to the Local Biodiversity Action Plan, and use that evidence that we gather to feed and form the bedrock and basis of nature recovery networks here in Shropshire. Finally, in summary, here in Shropshire, we are going to need to continue to build that evidence base for lichens so that we can use this evidence to get lichen conservation into policy and better land management. We need to use our abundance and distribution information as we gain it to build a robust LVAT list of lichens, as well as drawing up criteria for any local sites with lichen interests. And in the long term, we need to be certain that lichens are taken into account in the protection and management of the natural environment, as well as in the evolving nature recovery network. Hopefully, between us, we've given you a brief outline of what we've been up to here in Shropshire, and we hope it might help you in your area. We equally say, if there's anyone out there who's got experience of any of these 3 aspects we've been talking about, we'd love the chance to compare notes. because there's no point in reinventing the wheel and coming up with loads of information if somebody else has done the work for you. We have put together a fact sheet and help sheet with some pointers that might be of use. So please get in contact with us if you think we might be able to give you some help. Thank you very much.